Caleb, what are you eating? What? What you got?
Yeah,
Chocolate
Saturday.
Saturday. A chocolate Saturday, yummo. And is that your favourite at McDonald's?
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. How's the ice cream? Yummy? Yeah, alright. What else have you got? What's this?
Yeah.
Coke Zero. Yummy.
Are you allowed to have Coke Zero normally?
Yeah.
No. No.
Is this a special treat? Is it nice?
Yeah.
Caleb was born with Down syndrome. We didn't find out till we had Down syndrome till he was 3 days old. And to start off with, it took a little while to breastfeed. I breastfed his 4 older sisters, so I felt like I was fairly experienced. And thankfully we had a wonderful midwife who spent probably 2 or 3 hours with me when he was a few days old to get him to latch on. And I didn't know until afterwards that that was his last chance. After that he was going off to the special unit to have a nasogastric tube put in. So I'm always very thankful, even to this day, that that lady spent a lot of time with me, even after her shift had finished, to get Caleb feeding. Yeah. And then for the first few months he did really well. He put on weight, fed well, and it wasn't until he started having to go on solids and starting to lose weight and bottle feeding that we came with all the issues of his feeding and swallowing. He not gaining enough weight.
Yeah.
Like the first 3 or 4 months he gained a lot of weight quite quickly and was health-wise doing really well. But when it started time to start solids, that's when we realised there were some issues. We put food in Caleb's mouth and it would just fall straight back out. He would choke and gag and cry. And then he wasn't putting on enough weight, so we had to add some bottles into his feeding as well. And that's when he started to get sick easily, chest infections, and we first realised he was aspirating.
Yeah.
Yeah, the very first time I think Caleb was maybe 4 months old when we got a phone call saying that his name had come up on the list for a referral for speech pathology. Yes, yeah, we went along to a speech pathologist at ADAC.
Yep.
And from memory, I think there was a couple of people there, and not knowing that speech pathologists actually worked with feeding issues. And I remember having to breastfeed Caleb when I got there, and not knowing that I had to do that. And my first thing was like, oh no, I probably should put this in. I've got my daggy bra on. And then I would have worn my good bra if I knew I had to breastfeed in front of everyone. So I think that was my initial thing. I think I was a little bit shocked that I had to do that. Yeah. And then they watched.
Had you had to do that for any of your other kids?
No. So it's just something that I naturally was just doing with my other children and naturally doing it with Caleb.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden I had to breastfeed in front of a group of people, and they watched him feed, and I thought, because he was putting on weight and he was doing really well, that he was feeding quite well. And they watched him feed, and they went, oh no. I'm like, what? He said, he's taking too many sucks before he swallows. I'm like, really? Yeah, it should be suck, suck, swallow. He's saying suck, 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 swallow. And we can't have that. So then they'll show me how I had to break the seal to allow him a breath in between feeds. And I remember at the time being a little bit overwhelmed, especially when I have 4 older children who were under the age of 8, and a toddler running around thinking, how am I going to breastfeed this baby? Breaking the seal every couple of minutes. So yeah, initially it was all a little bit overwhelming, and there was a bit of a break from memory between when we first saw someone until he actually started solids, around about 8 months old. And yeah, I remember coming in and watching him eat, and it was a little bit of a disaster at first. And our first speech pathologist just watched him and went, oh my God, She said, he doesn't even know there's anything in his mouth. We've got so much work to do. I'm like, oh no.
That's pretty confronting to hear that
It
with your
was.
beautiful 8-month-old baby boy.
It was actually, yeah. Of course, feeding I think is just something you naturally do as a parent, and something you want to do, and to nourish your child is like one of the basic parts of parenting, I suppose, and to know that you're doing it wrong or there's a lot of work to be involved in something that should just be so simple.
Yeah.
Yeah. But as time went on, we learnt some new strategies, and it was explained to me why we had to do these things. So we used to massage Caleb's gums with a little toothbrush and put face washes in the freezer and put them on his cheeks to wake his little face up before we fed. I think initially for me, I found it all a bit confronting,
Yeah.
and you probably take things a little bit more personally than you would further down in the journey, because you are grieving and trying to work out, why all this is happening. Why can't my child just eat? But as we learnt some new strategies, that things do get easier, and we become quite, I suppose, close to a lot of the speech therapists and other therapists in our life, because they truly understood what we're going through, whereas other friends, I suppose, didn't understand the concerns that we had or the issues that we're going. I suppose even for our other children, they would say, oh, so-and-so's coming today, and they'd even get quite excited. And it was lovely how a lot of the therapists would include the other children, and there's a lot of them, but they remember their names. Sometimes. But then sometimes I don't remember their names, so that's okay. And even Sophie, who was only just over a year older than Caleb, would take the time to spend a few minutes to her reading a book while I was getting Caleb's food ready, because it wasn't always possible to organise a time without other children around. So we had to be a little bit creative in how we did things.
Yeah.
First time Caleb was about 12 months old, and he became quite sick quite quickly, and we went to our paediatrician who had a look at him. We went straight up to the hospital, had a chest x-ray, and found out that he had pneumonia, and I called our speech pathologist, and she was lovely. She met us up at the hospital, and that's when he had his first modified barium swallow, and I was quite surprised actually, because he had started on thickened fluids before then, because there was question marks over his aspirating, but I suppose I didn't really understand the reasoning why or how serious it could be. So after he had his first modified barium swallow, just actually watching the liquid slowly going to his lungs, and then big clumps of liquid going to his lungs, was a real eye-opener for me, and quite scary. And I felt a little bit of guilt for not, thickening things properly and all that sort of stuff to start off with. And then that's when our journey, I suppose, first began. And Caleb spent a lot of time in his first few years in and out of hospital with different chest infections. I think the longest we stayed out of hospital was 6 weeks when he was little, without some sort of chest-related issue.
Right from this end for me. Okay, good boy. Chew and swallow. Yeah. Try to get your head looking this way.
There we
Good
go.
swallow. Are you ready?
You're giving it a good chew. That's good work.
One more big swallow.
There we go. Perfect.
Beautiful. Well done. Good job. I think we might be done.
Done.
When he was quite little, he used to, when we started to feed him, he would scream and cry, arch his back, and just trying to get a few mouthfuls of food into him was quite stressful for him, became stressful for us. Something that you couldn't just do when you're out. When you're out, you couldn't just open up a tin of food and give him a couple of mouthfuls, because he had to be seated in a certain way. And it was actually our speech pathologist that suggested that he may have reflux. So then we had to go and see our paediatrician and speak to him about it, which I find sometimes difficult because you have to be, I suppose, a little bit diplomatic, going in there just asking questions. If I just went in there and said, I think he has reflux, that didn't always go down well, so I'd go in with some information or just say, what do you think about this? He's crying, he's screaming. His speech pathologist has suggested that he may have reflux. Can we look into that? And that's when Caleb first started on his medications, which made a lot of difference when he was younger and made feeding so much easier, less stressful for everyone.
Yeah.
So Caleb now still has quite significant reflux. We're hoping that he would have outgrown it. He's on quite a cocktail of medications that his gastro doctor is not happy about the amount of medications he's on in order to keep the reflux at bay. So we're now looking at possible surgical options and investigations. Yeah, Caleb has constant ear infections, pseudomonas infections, where he's actually got discharge coming out of his ears, which he has again at the moment. So we're looking into the possibility of whether it's the reflux that's going up high enough into his ears to cause all these complications, because he's now had 3 hospital admissions for IV antibiotics to try and clear the infections because they've gone into the mastoid bone. Initially, it was quite difficult, even when we talk about thickening fluids, because a lot of the paediatricians didn't think it made a difference. But I've noticed, I suppose, a big change. I don't know if they've been educated or what, in over the last 10 to 12 years, that they're quite happy that Caleb's on thickened fluids, understand why he's on them. But it did take a lot of educating and being quite diplomatic in doing that, leading up to that. And even the times that Caleb has been in hospital and he's had lots of different day surgeries or operations, and when he comes out of surgery, we always make sure he doesn't have something to eat or drink until he's fully awake, that his drinks are thickened, and there's always been a push to quick, get him something to eat and let's get him out of here. So we'd have to really, I suppose, stand our ground and say, no, he's not ready to have something to eat. We would always have a letter from our speech therapist to take to the hospital stating the reasons why, and we're actually lucky enough to have one lovely speech pathologist that came along to a couple of his day surgeries to be there after he woke up, to give us that little bit of backup, which was really good. And another time when Caleb had his tonsils out and he was in recovery, and my husband actually had almost an argument with the recovery nurse who wanted to give him ice chips as soon as he woke up. And we had to explain, he was in there, had to explain to her that he's on thickened fluids, that he can't have ice, especially when he's just woken up after throat surgery. And she became quite upset with my husband. And so just little things like that you shouldn't have to worry about when your child's just had an operation. And it's just a lack of, I suppose, understanding and knowledge, even in the medical field. Caleb became quite fussy. He wouldn't eat meat, he wouldn't eat anything crunchy. And I think it sort of stemmed back to every time he got sick with a chest infection, would go back to basics of pureed food. Then we'd sort of get him up to a certain level where he was trying new foods. He'd get sick, so we'd go back again. So I think he just got so used to having a bland, easy to swallow diet that as he got older and could actually cope with it, that we had a few sensory issues. So we had the SOS, we did the SOS feeding course, which was amazing. It really worked for Caleb. I was a little bit hesitant at first, thinking, you don't know this boy, he will not eat. And the speech therapist came in and he just adored her. She sat and played games with him to start off with and got a good rapport with him going. Then we'd sit at the table with white tablecloth, white plate, and pretty much whatever this pretty speech pathologist wanted him to do, he did. So he at first would just touch the food, put the food to his lips, then slowly started eating different foods. Then we embraced it as a family. So we all sat there with our white tablecloth and all had a turn of like just touching the food, smelling the food, and Caleb just started eating foods that we thought he would never eat.
Yeah. So you were all doing that as a family?
Yes.
Yeah. And I think maybe that's one of the things I know about your support of Caleb and his use of keyword sign as a way to communicate.
Yeah.
It's very much a family thing.
Oh, definitely. If you try and do it by yourself, it, I think, makes it a lot more difficult. Whereas we embraced it as a family, especially with the signing. I think that really helped. And having 4 older sisters to follow and copy were really great for Caleb. So we used to sit there and have it all meal times, and the girls thought it was all a little bit sort of fun at the time. And yeah, he just started eating things that we thought he would never eat. Yeah. So he's still far off from eating a steak and may never eat a steak or a bread roll, and there's still, he does have some limitations to what he can and can't eat. But yeah, it's just amazing to see him even trying new foods now. He basically had maybe 7 foods that he ate, full stop. So,
so he's come a long way.
A long, long way, yeah. Well, initially, Caleb, when he was quite little, was not too bad, but as he got older, he would refuse to eat and drink in front of anyone that came to our house that had a little tag. So we tried not, they'll take the tag off before they came in, but he was a bit too clever for that and worked it all out. So a few times I knew Caleb wasn't well and I was worried about his eating and drinking, so I videoed him and put it on a thumb drive. So sometimes you have to think outside the box. And I went into the office with this thumb drive and said, can someone please look at this? And he really wasn't doing well. And his speech pathologist said, I really need to see him. Well, Caleb, although he doesn't like speech pathologists, is perfect for doctors. So any medical appointments, he'll do exactly what's asked of him. So the speech pathologist said, bring him into the office. And we came into the office. She came out with a white lab coat, with a stethoscope around her neck, very serious face. Came in and said, Caleb, I need you to sit on the chair. Caleb sat on the chair. I need you to eat this. I need you to drink this. I need to listen to your swallow. And he did everything he was asked to. Yeah, and we were just amazed. But I was just so thankful that she thought outside the box and looked at Caleb's feeding and swallowing, and he did have quite a few issues at the time, and ended up in hospital the week later. So it's something that we really needed help with at that time, and I was just so thankful that they thought outside the box to do that.
Yeah.
I suppose just remembering that in the early days that families are grieving for the child that they thought they were going to have. And when I say early days, for some it might be a few days, could be weeks, could be months, could be years. And just be sensitive to that. I know in the early days with Caleb that you're having someone telling you how to feed your child, how to hold your child, how to bath your child, things that you just want to do naturally to bond with your child. All of a sudden you've got professionals involved telling you how to do the basics, and that can be quite difficult. Whereas further down the track now, if someone said, oh Julie, Caleb's got a terrible swallow, we need to thicken his feeds and do all these things, I'd be fine with it. Because I'm further along in the journey. And it's one of those things, I suppose, you come in as a professional because this child needs help, but it's that person's baby, that their child, and so I suppose you can take things quite to heart.
Yeah.
So I suppose just being sensitive in that, and just know that mother, father, whoever it is that's got that child knows their child best, and to be able to build a relationship with them, to be able to work around things. Probably relax a little bit, don't worry too much, which is hard to do in the moment, and I suppose have enough confidence to say, hey, this is not working. This is my child. I know this is the strategies that you think work, but it's not going to fit in with our family. It's not working for my child, and to be having a relationship with your therapist to be able to do that. And say those things. and that there is a bit of a light at the end of the tunnel. Caleb was in and out of hospital so often, and it became, even our daughters would wake up and go, "Oh, where's Mum? Did Caleb go to hospital last night?" Because Caleb's had a few ambulance rides in the middle of the night when he. Caleb's now 12, turning 13 this year. He's just started high school. Absolutely loves basketball, sports. He's recently just gone off to Special Olympics and had a wonderful time. Has got a three-pointer, can shoot three-pointers even at his height. So on the outside he looks great. He's a great healthy height, and but he still has some medical issues that are going on with his reflux, his ears, his bowels, and a few other issues. So sometimes it's hard because he looks so healthy that people don't understand that he does have some other health issues that we're worrying about.
Yeah. No. What are you doing?
Are you going to, where are you going?
Wheelchair.
Wheelchair, basketball.
Dodgeball.
Yeah.
Hey, tell me about basketball on the weekend.
Did you win?
Yeah.
Special Olympics basketball on the weekend?
Yeah.
Yeah? Oh, awesome.
What was your team? 1, 2, 3.
Butterball.
Timberwolves.